This is Mrs. Grissom. We are going to have a video kind of going over your grammar for the week mostly and just what to expect for the week. So we are on January 3rd of the new year, and you have a light week for the most part. You have pages 123 through 130 in grammar. We're going to go through that. You need to be moving through Little Women quickly because we're coming up on the assignment. The book report will be assigned here on the 17th and be due the following Monday. So you don't have much time left. Just read that. Also, you will have some vocabulary to study, and there's some specific grammar that I'm going to point out to you that will be on your quiz for next week. So if you don't already have it, get your grammar book out, get your assignment sheet out, and a pencil, and we're going to do some work together. Okay, whoops. Let me just move on to the next picture. Okay, so the first page is 123, and it's on diagramming gerunds. And you all know that gerunds are one of those verbals. The gerunds are the ones that always act as nouns, and they end in ing, ing. Okay. If you look at these examples, gerunds, because they can be nouns, they can pretty much be any kind of anything, like any part of sentence that a noun can be. So, for example, they can be a subject, like playing basketball well requires dedication. Playing is a gerund. You see the ing ending, and here it's acting as a noun, it's acting as a subject of the sentence. Basketball is the object of the gerund playing. Remember, we talked about how since verbals have verb characteristics, they can have complements. Now, when you diagram a gerund, you put it on a step. They call it a step. It's sort of a broken line. And if there's an object included, there's you see the line right here, just like as if it were a verb. So the top part of the step is the noun quality, and the bottom part of the step is the verb quality. So that's sort of a way to think about it. Okay, also you'll notice, I've made that too messy. You'll notice this pedestal that it's sitting on. It's on a little cake stand right there. So gerunds are placed up off the line as well as being on the step. The one exception to that is if you have a gerund that's an object of a preposition, you don't put it on a stand. Okay, let's see. So, for the diagrams, as usual, you may do odds only on these 10. So you'll be doing 5 diagrams. Okay. Let's see. Next. So that was gerunds. Now let's look at infinitives. That's the third verbal. The infinitives start with the word to, T-O, like to plus a verb form. Occasionally the word to can be omitted. It's just understood. So we're talking about infinitives. Infinitives can be used as 3 different things: nouns, adjectives, or adverbs. But for this exercise, we're only looking at how they can be used as nouns. Okay. When it's being used as a noun, it can be used as a subject, a direct object, predicate nominative, object of a preposition, or in a positive. Okay. So it's very versatile. You could have lots of parts of sentence that are expressed by an infinitive. So let's go through these examples in number 2. Infinitives can have complements, completing words, just as verbs can. So just like a regular verb can have a direct object, an infinitive can have an object. Infinitives can be modified by single adverbs or prepositional phrases. So infinitives can have all sorts of little words attached that are modifying. They can also, sometimes, I think this is really interesting, they can have their own subject. It's not the subject of a sentence and it's not considered a clause, it's still considered a phrase, but it can have a subject. And you'll see an example in just a minute. If there is a pronoun subject to an infinitive, it still takes the objective case, not the nominative case. Okay, and we mentioned that the word to can sometimes be omitted, and we consider the entire infinitive phrase as playing the part of sentence, not just the individual, not just the single infinitive, but the entire phrase is doing the job. So let's look at these examples. To keep the secret was hard. You can see the infinitive, it's easy to spot because it's got the word to in front of it. To keep is an infinitive. To keep what? Secret. Secret answers the question what after the infinitive, so it's the object of the infinitive. But the entire phrase together is your subject. Now you have a linking verb, was, and hard is a predicate adjective. Okay, let's look at the next one. Mrs. William asked her to babysit. So, what did Mrs. William ask? She asked this whole thing. She asked her to babysit. This phrase goes together. It's an infinitive phrase. To babysit is the obvious infinitive, but see this pronoun her? That is acting as the subject of the infinitive. Okay? So that's something that I don't think you covered in 7th grade. So it's kind of a new concept that um, infinitive phrases can include its very own little subject. Okay, more examples. Jim's best idea was what, or what actually equals what. It's this whole idea of to try camping. To try is the infinitive. To try what? Camping. And if you notice, you have back-to-back verbals. This is an infinitive. Camping here is a gerund, acting as the direct object of the infinitive. Okay? All right. Trey did everything except paint the hallway. Here's a good example of when the word to has been left out. You could insert it and it would make sense. Trey did everything except to paint the hallway. Mrs. King's dream to own her own bakery became a reality. This isn't a positive phrase. Starts with the infinitive to own. To own what? Bakery. And then her own bakery. Okay, so you're going to have some sentences. You're going to find the infinitive and underline it. And then you're going to write the use of the infinitive on the line out here. So the whole duty of man is to fear God and keep his commandments. Here's the first infinitive, to fear, and the word to is left out here, but it's to fear and to keep. So now how's that being used in the sentence? Go back. The whole duty of man is, so here we've got the subject of the sentence. Here we've got the verb. It's a linking verb. Therefore, we know we're looking for a predicate nominative or predicate adjective. These infinitives are acting as nouns, so it's a predicate nominative. All right, so you're going to do all of that page. And you have some more exercises to do. You're going to find the infinitive. Here's an example. Number 5 is an example where the word to has been left out. Here, number 6 is a good example that includes a subject. That word us, the word us gets included in this whole infinitive phrase because it's the subject of the infinitive to obey. Okay. Um, so find the infinitive, put a rectangle, a box around the entire infinitive phrase, including any complements or subjects or modifiers. And then look back at the whole sentence and say, what is the box doing in the sentence? What part of sentence is it playing? And there are your options. Okay. Whoops, that was an accident. Okay. Then you're going to come up with your own examples. I suggest finding an example up here, and you can use that as a model for your sentence if you're having trouble thinking of one. On the next page, you have diagramming infinitives as nouns. Again, do odds only, so you'll have 5 to do. These are not on a broken, like the step, like the gerunds were, but they are up on a pedestal, and they look more like the way you do a prepositional phrase. Okay, and here's an example where you've got a complement to the infinitive. It's got a direct object. Let's look to see what you do when you have a subject. Here's an example of an infinitive phrase that includes its own subject. Look how it's up on this high line. Her to babysit. Her kind of goes higher. Got a divider. Whoops. I didn't do that very well. Okay. And again, they're all on pedestals. Okay. If the word to gets left out, you can use a little X to show that it's been left out. Okay. So odds only on that page. And here is an important page. So I would like you to star this page. We're going to read through it carefully. This page will be the grammar that you need to study for a quiz for next week. So I might give you a quiz that says a group of words that contains both a subject and a verb is and you would write down clause. So I want you to know all these definitions. I think you probably already know these 3, but I might ask you just to make sure you know. So a clause is a group of words that has a subject and a verb. It's going to be a part of a sentence, either the whole sentence or a part of a sentence. If it's an independent clause, that means it expresses a complete thought and can stand alone. So an independent clause has a subject and a verb and expresses a complete thought. A dependent clause, otherwise known as subordinate clause, does not express a complete thought and can't stand alone. A dependent clause, here's one that you might need to study. I'm sure you will. A dependent clause that functions as a noun is called a noun clause. Okay, so when you have a clause, can't stand alone, but it's functioning as a noun within another sentence, we call it a noun clause. Noun clauses are introduced by certain signal words, and I want you to memorize these signal words. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There are 11 signal words I want you to memorize. It makes it easier to spot the noun clauses if you'll go ahead and do this. For the rest of the year, we're going to be learning about several different kinds of clauses, and one way to tell them apart is by the signal word or the word that starts out the clause. So signal words introduce and they subordinate the dependent clause that follows. Okay, observe the following things in the examples below. Every clause has a subject and a verb and may have complements and modifiers. An entire noun clause is used as a noun, and you know, noun is a part of speech, but these are the parts of sentence that the noun can be. The subject, direct object, predicate nominative, object of the preposition, or a positive. The signal words that, whether an if, merely introduce clauses, and they don't serve another function, but all the other signal words are introductory words, but they also serve a grammatical function within the clause. So the signal word itself might be the subject of the clause, and we'll see some examples of that here. So let's work through these sentences. That we won the championship game. Well, wait a second. Let's go back and read these. It would behoove you to start memorizing these now before you do the grammar pages that go along with it. It'll help you a ton. So that, whether, if, who, whom, which, what, whoever, whomever, whichever, whatever. That, whether, if, who, whom, which, what, whoever, whomever, whichever, whatever. So if you can learn the first three, and then the next four, and then just stick the word ever on the last four, the previous four, then you have them all. Okay, sorry. Okay, so we have a clause right here. That we won the championship game was a major accomplishment. Here we see a signal word that we've memorized, that. And the word that was one of the ones that, just as an introductory word, it subordinates the clause. And what do I mean by that? I mean, if you took that word away, we won the championship game, that would be an independent clause. It would make complete sense on its own. It could stand alone. But with the word that in there, it makes it subordinate. So that we won the championship game, you've got a subject, you've got a verb, you've got a direct object of the verb, you've got some modifiers for the direct object, and then you've got the introductory word. All that together acts as the subject of the sentence. Was is your linking verb, and accomplishment is your predicate nominative. Here's another example. I know what they want. What is an introductory word that you've memorized, a signal word, and it does introduce, but it also acts as something within the clause. Let's see. They is the subject. Want is the verb of the clause. What do they want? They want what? They want what? So the word what is the direct object of the verb want. And that happens a lot because that's a common construction. Okay. I'm sorry that we are not in person because these clauses can be a little bit more difficult to get a hold of. Next one. A new pair of riding boots is what Abby wants for her birthday. So you see the signal word what, and you know it's one of the ones that is an introductory word, but it also plays a part of the clause. So Abby is clearly the subject. Wants is the verb. Abby wants what? What? So it's like you don't actually get the answer. You just what stands in for the answer what. So Abby wants what, and then for her birthday is just a prepositional phrase that's modifying. Okay, Amy will pass the ball to whoever is near the basket. Okay, this is an interesting concept. Here we have a preposition. Everybody knows to is a preposition, right? Prepositions always must have objects. Instead of having a one-word object, we have an entire noun clause. It starts with the signal word whoever, and then you have this linking verb is, and here we just have a prepositional phrase. So in order for it to be considered a clause, it must have a subject and a verb. So whoever is the subject. Now you might say, why is it not to whomever? Why is this in? This is the, hopefully you remember, or maybe you don't, but this is the nominative case pronoun. Whoever is nominative case. The reason why it's nominative case, even though it's within the prepositional phrase, is because inside this box, the whoever is the subject of the clause. So that trumps the fact that the whole thing altogether is the object of the preposition to. So that's going to come in handy when you're trying to pick which preposition to use. And notice the word to is not included in the noun clause. That's outside the noun clause. The whole noun clause is the object of the preposition to. Okay. And last, we have an example of an appositive. her suspicion that the old man was lonely proved correct. Okay, sometimes the introductory word that is omitted when the noun clause is used as a direct object. And here's a good example. We thought the noise was thunder. So you could imagine that being left out. In fact, I believe last year, you in seventh grade, you were taught to never use that, to not use that in your writing. We thought the noise was thunder. So you might just be aware that the word that is commonly omitted, especially when it's a direct object. Okay, now moving along. Okay, you're going to have to do some work with these noun clauses. So really go over those 11 words to get very familiar with them. And you've got to figure out, first underline each of the verbs. Because you're told that all of these have noun clauses in them, you know by definition a noun clause is subordinate. It can't stand on its own. So you know that it's going to be within another clause. So you're going to be finding two verbs probably, because there's going to be a verb in each clause. So for number one, wrote and is are the two verbs. Whoever wrote that essay, that is a noun clause. That's why it's in brackets. The whoever, the signal word, is the subject of the clause. Wrote's the verb of the clause. Essay happens to be the direct object in the clause. Is the verb of the main clause, the one that's independent. Talented is a predicate adjective. But you can see that this noun clause is acting as the subject of the verb is. The whole thing together is acting as the subject, which they don't ask you about that, but they will in a minute. When you get to the bottom of the page, they ask you that. Okay. So this is a little bit more thinking than you normally probably have to do on these exercises. At the bottom, you're going to put the brackets around the noun clauses. Just watch out for those signal words. And then you got to put on the line over here to the left, sorry, can't get my pencil working. Over on the left, you put what part of sentence the noun clause is acting as. Okay? All right. And you're going to do all the ones on the next page as well. You have to diagram some noun clauses. Again, you may do odds only on that. And let's look to see how this is different because it's a whole clause, not just a phrase. So, let's see. You can see that the clause goes on its own little pedestal. And the that, whether, and if, the ones that don't really have a grammatical function, they go up on a little dashed line. They, join with a little dashed line. But the ones that are the signal words that are actually apart, grammatically, they'll fit wherever they belong. Like if they're the direct object, they'll go over past the verb to the right of the verb. Or if they're the subject, they would go here. So they get to go up on their own pedestal. Here's an example where the signal word is the subject of the clause. Here's another example at the bottom where it's a word that's not really, it's just an introductory word and it's not grammatically part of the clause. Okay. All right. That's the last page of your grammar. You don't have, most all of you don't have any writing this week. So I think maybe one person or two are still working on their final drafts of the book report. So you should have plenty of time to focus on your grammar and take it slow. We also are going to do this page 142, on your quiz next week. So don't forget on the quiz, you need to, it's on your assignment sheet, but you're going to really need to know that page on noun clauses. I think it's page 127. And then this page of definitions. So just looking through these quickly. Let's see. Whoopsie. Okay. Coherence. Putting your ideas together in such a way that the reader can easily follow from one point to the next. You might think of the opposite of coherent. The opposite would be incoherent. That means it doesn't make any sense. If you get a big, hard knock to your head, if you get a concussion, you might talk incoherently, you might not make sense. So, coherence is um, making sense, putting your ideas together in such a way it makes sense. It's easy to follow. Composition, okay, that's just a piece of writing. Um, it's kind of a generic term. Description, you all know what that is. It's when you appeal to the senses by painting a vivid picture, giving lots of sensory details. Details, those are just words used to describe. Um, it could be persuade. It could be reasons, examples, lots of different things. The details are the stuff that come in the body of the paper. Diction. That has to do with your choice of words. And some of you may notice I have marked on your papers word choice. I'll say something like word choice, or I might say not the best choice for academic papers. You could have used a perfectly good word, but it's a word that's more used talking among friends and not really academic sounding, if that makes sense. So your diction changes depending on your audience or the purpose of your writing. Okay. Emphasis. Um, that's just there are different techniques you can use to put more emphasis on certain ideas over others. Um, you can draw attention by repeating keywords or phrases or writing more, or the placement of a certain idea can make it draw more attention to itself. Essay is factual writing on a single topic. Exposition, that's just writing that explains. We talked about some different kinds, right? Descriptive, expository, persuasive, and narrative paragraphs. So exposition is one of the four basic kinds of writing. Extended definition, that just is just sort of logical, just like it sounds. It's not just a simple definition, but a more detailed definition. Figurative language, that's when you don't say, it's the opposite of literal. It's when you use things like hyperbole, metaphors, personification, similes. You use these techniques to describe, to get an idea across, and it's not just the definition goes beyond the literal word on the page. So, um, figurative language makes the writing come alive. It's interesting and fun. You don't you'll often not use much figurative language in academics writing, though. Okay, so fluency, the the ability to express yourself freely and naturally. Focus, that's obviously the sort of the main point or subject or thesis of a piece of writing. The form is the kind of the structure, how something's organized. Um, Free writing, sound like it sounds, writing openly and freely. Generalization, that's an idea or statement that emphasizes the general characteristics rather than specific details. So we make generalized statements sometimes about sort of broad statements um, that aren't so detailed. Grammar, that's the study of the structure of language. Issue, you know what an issue is, like abortion is an issue, gun rights is an issue, sort of topics that people have opinions about. Okay, jargon. Jargon is sort of technical language. So you might have, they list in groups like musicians, journalists, computer scientists. They'll have special words for their field that aren't common knowledge. So even very bright people with large vocabularies might not be familiar with certain technical terms that are usually only used within certain fields. A journal, you know what that is. Limiting the subject. Limiting the subject is an important thing to do. You have to narrow down. If you're told to write a paper on World War II, you could write book after book after book. So you have to limit the subject down to maybe some very small part of World War II in order to um, do a good job. Okay, um, the literal meaning, again, that's the opposite of figurative. Literal is um, the actual definition of the word on the page. So sometimes kids, little kids, they'll take everything very literally. It can be kind of funny. I was trying to think of an example, but I can't think of it right now. But sometimes idioms that we use, they might take literally. Um, he was about to blow his top, meaning lose his temper. Somebody taking that literally might think he literally was his top was going to blow up or something. Okay, logic, you know what that is. Modifiers, that's just descriptive words, phrases, or clauses. Narration is another one of those basic types of writing, like expository. It tells a story. Objective, this is giving factual information. It's not persuasive, it's just objective. Just the facts, please. This is what we all wish that journalists would do, just give us objective facts without adding their own opinions, but it's hard to find that. So that's a quick overview of those terms. And I think that's all. So hang on to your homework, and you can just turn it all in next week. And if you have any questions, you can text me or email me, and I will hope to see you next week. Stay healthy. Bye bye.